Welcome to the Fit Dad Nation podcast, forging strong fathers and raising a stronger generation. It's time to get up or shut up with your host, Steve Roy.
Hey guys, this is Steve Roy, the host of the Fit Dad Nation podcast. Welcome to the show. Thank you for listening. So before I introduce my guest today, and I've got a very interesting person with me today. I'm really excited to be speaking with her. I just want to take a moment to invite all you dads who are listening right now and who are ready to start kind of taking your health and fitness back and becoming the best dads and the best husbands you can be to join our brotherhood online. And the best way to do that right is go to Facebook and apply to our private group, which is the Fit Dad Base Camp. So that's facebook.com/groups/Fit Dad Base Camp. So my guest today, her name is Jamie Elizabeth Thompson. And she's a holistic sex and intimacy coach who teaches people the tools to get their intimate needs deeply and specifically met and how to quickly navigate conflict with open, loving communication. So I read this from her website. So, what she's doing is extremely important and obviously a huge topic in our lives as dads, as men, as husbands. And I'm really excited for her to be here. And so what I love about her style, and after reading some of her posts and watching some of her videos, she's not hiding behind any fancy terms or anything like that. She just tells it like it is and is just telling it real. So Jamie, welcome. I appreciate your time.
Yes, it's really great to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, of course. So it's, most of my guests up to this point have been kind of like high performers, coaches, Navy SEALs, like get shit done type of guys or people. You're actually the first woman I've spoken with on the podcast. But what you teach, in my opinion, is it's more important than any of that other stuff, the how-tos and all that other stuff, because at the very core essence of what we are as men and as husbands, right? We want to be able to connect and have that really, true deep connection with our partner. And that's exactly what you do.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing that's fascinating about this is often the skills that are required to be a massive success as a masculine man in this world and be healthy and fit and really conquer everything are a very different set of skills than it takes to create the amazing, hot, intimate life that you want to have when you get home. So this is where often I have high-performing men that I work with, and they are missing the softer skills of how to actually show up in such a way once they get home that is more in resonance with their partner.
Yeah, and it comes to mind. I mean, that's such an issue where you're not there on an emotional level to be where your wife or partner is, and so there's that disconnect. And I know a lot of guys that I've spoken with are struggling with those types of things. So before we jump into some of the questions I have, how did you get started even doing this?
Yes, so I studied psychology and was very interested in what makes people do what they do. I watched my parents' relationship growing up, and I thought, I don't want that. I want something else. And so it began exploring and looking at what makes people do the things they do. What makes a connection and a deep connection in relationship, and how can that be created? Is it something that just happens on its own, or is it something that can actually be intentionally created? And so for the last 10 years, I was working with men in dating, and then I was working with couples, and I've really ran the gamut in what I call the intimate field of coaching. And what I discovered is that the one thing that was in common, whether it was working with men who were in the dating world, working with women in the dating world, working with couples, is that the one thread that ran through was sex. And that everyone is interested in how can we have better sex. And when people were on the brink of divorce, oftentimes it was because of sex. When people were having a hard time finding a match in dating, oftentimes it was because of sex, not being in relationship with their not knowing how to navigate sensitive and intimate topics. So the through line that I found as like the baseline of the problem that I see us facing in our country today stems from the yo-yo swinging back and forth between sexual repression and sexual hedonism, and really an overindulgence in sex, and not being able to really fully in our relationship with our intimate partners in a way that everyone feels like they are being fully met and fed and nourished and really getting what they want. And so it's an interesting thing to even talk about today, because what I find interesting about this is that it's okay to have all kinds of sex with all kinds of people, but actually talking to them about the kind of sex that we are having, or talking about it at the level of group, so that we can actually make some sense of how to explore and expand and do it better. All of that is off limits, but yet porn is okay. That we're constantly being sold sex through the media. We're constantly having all of this inundation of sexual indulgence, but yet it's on a baseline of a puritanical culture of repression. So there's not really room for us to actually have an authentic adult erotic education where we are really learning how to have sex in a way that is more fulfilling for everyone involved. So this ends up being the one of the major foundations of what I see happen in relationship. And because the nature of desire is that it's constantly changing, when a major life event happens, like a big move, or you have a kid or jobs, oftentimes there's a shift that happens, and the intimate life doesn't catch up because the communication isn't well enough intact to keep up. So a lot of what I work with people on is intimate communication, how to talk through conflict about sensitive topics, how to actually claim and share what they are wanting more of in the bedroom, how to meet each other in what each person is wanting, even if it's not their specific desire. So there's a lot of ways that we could go in this conversation, but there's kind of the baseline of why I do what I do.
Okay, and you just said it. I mean, in my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like even if you both, like, one of you likes a certain thing, one of you finds it disgusting, whatever, as long as the communication is there and you can actually have a legitimately honest conversation about it and not get offended or pissed off or whatever, then you're going to have a better intimate or sex life because of that.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
but the problem is that it doesn't happen, right? I mean, it does happen, but not nearly enough. I mean, I know that's killed a lot of marriages, was a big part of struggle in my own marriage and subsequent divorce. But yeah, I mean, you just don't get on the same page, right? Like, you get frustrated, you get pissed, you feel rejected, you can't talk about it, and it just gets worse, right? And then
with the culture that we have today, what's happening often, I mean, so we're primarily talking to men here, what I'm seeing happening is, instead of doing the work to face the angry wife, or face the disconnect of the intimate communication, what the tendency is of the masculine is to actually just turn away and distance, or run away and look at porn or flirt with someone else, and rather than actually showing up to meet the conflict that is currently happening. I had a couple that I was working with, and she was just had some sexual challenges. I mean, like, she was someone who had some sexual trauma, and he didn't want to. It's like he got blown out. He got overwhelmed by the emotions that would come up in sex with her, and overwhelmed by her experience, because he didn't have the skills to actually deal with it. Now no one's teaching anyone those skills. So there's no fault of this man for not having those skills. And so the way that he dealt with it was going and watching porn. And then she noticed that there was not as much attention on her coming this way, and further increased the wedge that was between them, because now his attention was, so all of his sexual attention was not even on her anymore, and it was somewhere else. So, by the time they came to me, they were in this place of feeling a lot of distance, and he was fed up because it's like, well, I can't do it right anyway. I don't even know what she wants. She was fed up because it was like, he's not even giving me an attention anymore. And you can really see where both people are coming from here. I mean, no one is in the wrong. It's actually the lack of communication that's the enemy. Like you said, it's not the relationship, it's not the people. It's really being able to sit down and have a conversation about a topic that's uncomfortable. I think that if you can sit down, have a conversation about a topic that makes you uncomfortable and remain present and in a compassionate place, but still owning your power, I think that's one of the greatest skills that you can develop on the planet. Because having this skill of communication is massively impactful for everywhere in your life, including work and business and health, and just going throughout your day. So one of the ways that you can learn this is in your intimate relationship with your partner. Because if you can do it with your angry wife, you can do it with anyone. So, that's part of what I really enjoy helping people learn.
Yeah, so obviously it's a learned skill, and it's not an easy skill to learn, or else more people would be doing it. So the kid's listening right now and is thinking, "There's no chance on earth I have that conversation with my wife, because first of all, I feel like she doesn't care. She's so busy with the kids and cooking dinner and doing everything else. She doesn't even want to talk about it. And if I talk about it, it's going to be like, well, you just shut up about it. And we're never alone, and we don't have, she's tired or I'm tired. I have to get up early, and so it just, a week turns into a month, turns into 5 years." And you never talk about it, and before long, you guys they're having sex once every few months, and you're like, things sucks, and things start to fall apart. So, I mean, where do you even start with a situation? Because I know a lot of men are living those types of lives.
Yes, absolutely. So this is such a great question. Where do I start? For someone out there listening right now, how do I even establish a conversation that is going to access this level of depth when, we're like kind of angrily existing in the kitchen, making, cleaning up for dinner and not connecting. So the way that a place to start is always in there. There's three aspects to it. One is responsibility. Another is vulnerability. And another is looking at what is in it for her. If you can bring up a conversation that has responsibility, vulnerability, and addressing what's in it for the other, then you're starting off on the right foot. So a way that you can do that is, man, I mean, it's like, take a deep breath, because it's a moment where we're going to want to make it about the other person and make it their fault. And if we want to heal the divide, that's just not the place to start. Throwing rocks is not the place to start. Building walls is the place to start. Rather, we must build a bridge and start walking across it. If we see that there's a point of tension and we want to create more harmony and peace and enjoyment, then we get to build the bridge and start walking across it. So a good way to do that is simply by opening with some kind of context. So often what I see happen is people aren't opening with a context for the new kind of conversation that they're creating with their partner. So a way that you can do that is simply by saying, I feel like I've dropped the ball with some things, and I just want to own up to it with you. And I want to have a conversation that addresses some of the things that I feel might be going on in our relationship. And I want to do this because I love you and I care about you and I'm committed to us. Are you open? Are you open to that? So actually just bringing out the context of owning what is currently happening in the relationship, bringing a vulnerability to it. Like you can feel it in the tone. You can hear it in the tone of like, I'm coming to you with some humility. I'm coming to you wanting to address something that we both know needs to be addressed. This is no secret. This is calling out the elephant that is glaringly obvious over in the corner of the room. And letting her know what is in it for her. So by saying, I'm doing this because I want to have this conversation with you because I care about our connection, because I want to have deeper intimacy, because I feel distant and I'm sad about that, because I miss you. I mean, whatever it is that is the vulnerable truth of sharing what you see possible in the relationship. I see that we could have a deeper level of intimacy. I see that we could, back to the way that we were in the beginning, and that's a great place to start, is remember what it was like when you and her were together in the beginning. What was that like for you? What was the energy like between you? How were you communicating? What was the most present? How were you showing up? How was she showing up? Coming to a conversation like this from that place with a commitment to what brought you together in the first place is an excellent place to start, and an excellent place to voice your responsibility, your vulnerability, and your what's in it for us.
Yeah, you said a couple of really important things and something came to mind. So first of all, taking responsibility, right? So taking ownership. I think a lot of men get to a place where it's blame game. It's like, well, I'm a man. I have sexual desires. I have needs, right? This is your fault. You keep shutting me out. You don't want to ever have sex, right? So it's from that mentality, right? So that's the first obstacle. And then the second piece is the vulnerability piece, which is another struggle for a lot of guys. We have egos, we have walls. A lot of guys view, being really open and vulnerable as a weakness, which, it's not, but a lot of men view it as a weakness. So getting those two things out of the way, I think, is probably going to be a struggle for a lot of men, especially guys that aren't in like already super loving relationships and are just kind of going through the motions of a marriage and, not really happy, but not absolutely miserable either. So, yeah, I think that's a tough thing for a lot of guys.
It's tough. And it's a moment of truth, and it's not going to be easy. I mean, this is one of those moments where, do you want to remain in the comfortable misery that you're in, or do you want something else? And there is absolutely an eye of the needle that one must pass through. I mean, it's like it's going to take facing the discomfort. And that's where actually presencing yourself to what it was like in the beginning, presencing yourself to what is the end life that I would like to have, what is the type of relationship and communication and care I would like to have. And it can be supportive if it's already in a really challenging space to get someone to help you mediate. This is where sometimes things are beyond the repair that two people can do on their own, and they actually need some support from someone. And there are many people that you can reach out to for that kind of thing. And the thing about blame is that if you've noticed, it's not, that doesn't work. So if we're in this space where we are unwilling to give up our own righteousness and thinking that, it's all her fault. And for women, it's the same thing, for thinking, it's all his fault. He's not giving me what I need. She's not giving me what I need. That dynamic is a stalemate. And so unless someone is willing to come out of that dynamic and take some responsibility, which will ultimately heal it, then nothing is going to happen. So it's one of those situations where, people say, you can either be right or you can be happy. And there's a moment where we have a moment of truth where we get where we face this. I've had it in relationship before as well, where I was like, you know what? This is so hard for me right now, and I'm going to take responsibility for something. I'm going to take responsibility for this thing that I've been doing that I know doesn't feel right. I know it's not my highest that I've been giving you, and I'm going to take responsibility for that. And sometimes that's the only baby step we make is to just, in a moment of like, fuck it, here it is. And that can be enough. It's the willingness to let go, because oftentimes women are they're just waiting, they're just hungry, they're just waiting for some bit of acknowledgement of their experience. And this is part of the piece with blame, is we think that by taking responsibility we are now accepting the blame, but that's actually not true. You can take responsibility for a way that you've shown up. Like, what I would say is make it specific. Don't go in taking responsibility for everything that's ever gone wrong in your relationship over the last 10 years. That's going to feel like blame. That's going to feel like you blaming yourself, which is falling on the sword and martyrdom. And that's not actually even what is going to be effective here. What's effective is finding some specific piece that you can fully own and take responsibility for. And it doesn't mean that it's all your fault. It actually just means that you are actualizing yourself as a man and saying, there's something that I know that I've done that is not quite the man that I'm committed to being, and I'm going to own that. And that, because responsibility is contagious, it's like it's absolutely contagious when we taking responsibility. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I'm sure everyone out there has taken at some point in their life. When you start really doing it and you start owning something, people around you start owning their part as well. It's contagious. And it's not about blame. We can actually, there's a collapse between responsibility and blame. And I think that it's worth separating that and noticing that we can take responsibility for an action and not blame ourselves for the entire relationship going wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, this is a common thing, but in my opinion, and I'm not the expert, but I feel like, married men don't want to cheat. Obviously, we know infidelity is a huge issue. But I feel like they don't want to cheat. They just want to have that feeling, like they want that feeling of being desired. They want to have, and so if they're not getting it at home and it doesn't happen, it happens a lot. They're not getting it at home for a million different reasons. Their secretary, whoever, a coworker, whatever, shows them some kind of, interest and spark, and they start thinking about, how great it was in the beginning with their wife, or maybe past relationships. And then before you know it, it leads to something else. And, I think that all that could be avoided, not in all cases, but, if the couple was just sit down and have a real, conversation like you were just talking about, and owning up to it.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm as big a part of this as you are. I'm failing you in this way. What can I do? Be honest and tell me, what can I do? What is it? And then be willing to do it.
Yeah. And, you coming to infidelity, it's interesting. You're an interesting part of this here. And it is that women love sex too. I mean, women love intimacy. If you remember what it was like at some point in your relationship, perhaps she wanted it. And oftentimes it seems like what I'm seeing happen is men get in this routine of, oh, well, I'm just going to keep doing it the way that we've always done it. And then women are in a place where oftentimes we don't have the skill to actually communicate and let you know what we want. And this is unfortunate. And this is not your fault. And it just is what is present today. So the question is, rather than, oh, she should be able to tell me what she wants. If this was a podcast for women, then I would be talking about women learning how to speak up for what they want, so that they can actually invite their man into the kind of intimacy that they're wanting, because ultimately men just want to know. They're like, give me the manual and I'll do it, right? This is a podcast for men, and we can all take responsibility. What there is for you is to learn how to create the space for her to come forward with what she's desiring more, to let her know that you're really interested in what it is that she wants. And that's where, showing up with a conversation that's like, hey, I know we're so busy, and, there's so much going on, and intimacy might be the last thing on your mind. And I just want you to know that I'm really interested in learning more about what it is that you really want, and that I care about that. And I just want you to know that. Do you know that? It's like something like that can be really helpful, because oftentimes women are, what happens in our autonomic nervous system is, if we are out there and in business, in fully operating in our masculine energy in order to function in a masculine paradigm that we live in, when we get home, our nervous system is often way too keyed up to even think about having sex, because the parasympathetic nervous system needs to relax out of fight or flight mode, out of survival mode, out of stress, in order for turn on to exist in the feminine body. And this is sometimes true for men as well, but men oftentimes have a more powerful testosterone hormonal drive that has them able to achieve sexual turn on even when they're stressed, or even as a way of dealing with stress. Whereas women oftentimes need to relax more in order for turn on to even be possible. So there's a way that, if you know that going into it, perhaps the way you approach her could be different. And you could ask, I feel like I've just really dropped the ball here, and I want to take responsibility for that. And I'm curious, like, what is it that you're wanting more of? Is it, maybe it's not in sex, or, are you wanting a massage? Are you wanting, more foreplay? I had a couple that I worked with that he said, he's the one who contacted me, and he said, she just doesn't want to have sex anymore. I don't know what's wrong. They have a 3-year-old, and it's like, ever since the baby was born, no, there's barely any sex. And he has to, it's like he has to jump through hoops, and he's just completely frustrated. And, got on the phone with, and in a session with both of them. And she said, I can't even imagine, from where I am in my life, where I'm sitting, I can't even imagine having sex when I get in bed. It's all I can do to relax enough to fall asleep, because she's running a business. They have a business together. He has a job. She has another side business. She has her daughter, and then all the things that her daughter is involved in, and they have so many balls in the air that they're juggling, and she was stressed. So my assignment was, for the next week, only have foreplay with no intention of having sex intercourse as a destination. Instead, just enjoy each other in your physical, intimate presence. And because, she was saying, I'm just not in the mood. I don't know, if you get me in the mood, then maybe I will. But it was like, she's like, I just can't even think about it. So over the next 5 days, texted me on the morning of day 6. They didn't make it 7 days, because on the night of night 5, they had so much foreplay, and her body was learning to relax when she got home with him, because he stopped pushing for sex and actually started giving her what she really wanted. And, there was more touching, there was more massage. I mean, he was like offering gestures and leaving her sweet notes and sending her text messages throughout the day. And really, I mean, he really took this on. It was amazing to see. And what was also fascinating is I watched him, even before they started having intercourse again. I watched him begin to enjoy himself again in the experience of helping her feel special. He let go of the idea that he was right and that she was just, rigid, and his frustration, and he started actually giving her what she wanted. So morning of day 6, I get a text message, and he said, he just sent with he has a sense of humor. He sent me a text message. All it said is, "She initiated," smiley face. And I knew, and I was like, yes, this is what happens. She was the one that actually said, that actually moved it to sex. So they were having foreplay, and and I mean, and she was like, "Oh yeah, of course I did. I mean, I was in the mood." Was her response. His response was like, "I can't believe this happened. This is amazing," right? But it's like, she was like, "Obviously. I mean, I was turned on. Hello." It was just, it was a funny thing. And so I think often that's, a way that men can approach this is like, finding out. Because if you don't know what she wants, then there's no possibility of moving forward. So the next step, if you don't know what she wants, is to find out what she wants by all means necessary. If she's like a lockbox and won't open her mouth to tell you, you must find out somehow. It's like, that's going to be your number one curiosity, is to somehow figure out what the hell it is she wants. And then number 2 is step down off the high horse and actually start giving that to her. And the type of giving is really important, because it's not in order to. It's not, "Oh, I'm going to take you on a romantic date in order to have sex." What was important in the scenario that I shared is that he fully committed to foreplay. He fully committed to foreplay. And whatever that looked like. And I mean, she gave, we created a whole list of things that she wanted, and he was just like, "Okay, I'm just going to do all of these things," and with no intention of actually having sex afterwards. And it's just the law of nature. When you run after something, it runs away. When you back and give it space, it comes to you. So there's kind of an example of how this can really actually work in reality.
Yeah, and you talked about this earlier, and I'm assuming it's true. The more we push, the more they pull back, right? We pester,
Yeah.
we talk about it, we try to coax them, and and it just makes it more difficult, right? I mean, it's just an absolute turnoff when you're pestering them or bugging them. "Why don't we ever have sex? I need sex," and they're like, So that's a good thing to know. And maybe your spouse, your partner needs, let's say they want a foot rub every night after getting home from work, and you're like, "Well, I don't want to do that." Well, you have to suck it up, right? Who cares? They maybe they need that to relax, and then that will get them into. But a lot of guys, I think, aren't willing to put in the time. Let's say they want a half-hour massage. How many guys are going to want to spend 30 minutes of their busy day just sitting there, rub their wife's back, not even believing that it's going to lead to sex, right? I mean, it's like, oh man, again, last time I did that, you just got up and walked out of the room like nothing happened. But you're saying that's absolutely the wrong mindset. You have to go in with not that expectation and say, "This is what she wants, this is what she says she needs," or "This is what I'm committed to it. I have to do it. And if it pans out the way I want, great. If not, it's not going to hurt."
Yeah, I think an important piece of this is if you give a begrudging massage for an hour, that's not gonna help anything, right? So it's like, just notice, like there's sometimes I hate to say it, but it's like a sense of entitlement that's like, "Oh, well, I should just get what I want, and I'm unwilling to give my partner what they want." And this is and this runs both ways with masculine and feminine. Feminine entitlement, very, very different. Feminine entitlement is oftentimes about, I'm entitled to your money. I'm entitled to your, emotional commitment to me. And men's entitlement is more like, I'm entitled to sex with you. So we're dealing with entitlement in both directions. And I just think it's important to take a look at where we feel that we are automatically entitled to something of our partners. And actually, there's a way that I think people, I call it abusing couple privileges, where we think, oh, this person loves me, so I don't want to do something to make them feel special. I don't want to give them a massage. And well, it's not, doesn't need to exist in a transactional reality where it's like, well, I did this for you, you did this for me. The actual context, the very foundation of the way that two people are relating to each other is what needs to shift. Where and it takes something to move from relating to each other, well, like, well, if you do this for me, then I'll do it for you, but if you don't do it for me, then fuck you. Like, to shift from that to, oh, well, I'm going to be in like, it's like developing a new culture of relationship where I feel good when I fully give to you. Giving to someone with like 50 to 90% doesn't feel good. But when you fully give yourself and really show up and really enjoy giving that massage, that's when it feels good to both people. And that's when the actual context of the relationship shifts. So if you're still in the context of, oh, this sucks, do this for you so that maybe you'll want to have sex with me later, that's actually not going to land over there with her, because I don't know if you've noticed, but she can pick up on that kind of thing. So if you're doing that, she's gonna know. So that's, I would just not do it until you're at the place where you're actually willing to show up with something to offer. Because if you want her to show up that way with you, then someone has to take the first step. And here's the thing, it's like, actually look at, like, what do I really want? Do I want to have a happy, fulfilling, satisfying, hot sex life? If that's what you really want, then maybe come about it in a different way, because there's actually, the way that you're going to create that is not by do what you've been doing. And so it's important to actually change the tune. You know, it's like, you got to change the radio station here. And it's really not about giving in order to get something. It's about actually enjoying the experience of the giving, and letting yourself share in the joy that you feel that she is receiving from you.
Yeah. I mean, you know, the guys listening, it does. I mean, I would imagine 98% of the guys or more listening to this would love nothing more than to have that hot, you know, steamy type of stuff that you're talking about, the really passionate sex, lovemaking, whatever you want to call it, and just realize that, yeah, it's on us, right? Don't wait for her, and it's on her, it's on us. And I think most of us can have that if we're willing to put in the work and the time, effort, and the energy. And it's there. I mean, it's just, you have to work for it, and you've probably dug a deep hole, and now you've got to come back out of it. But, you know, it's there. You know, you were married for a reason, right? I mean, you loved each other enough. I'm sure at some point your sex life was amazing, and it's still there somewhere.
Yes. And you know, when we're talking to men, it's like, I get really excited talking to men about this, because women respond to leadership. You know, women respond to you know, stepping into leadership and leading her deeper into what is possible in her own sexuality. That is one of the sexiest things on the planet. And complaining or whining or begging or asking, don't ever ask to have sex, please. It's like, that's not the way. If it's your wife, you know, it's like, oh, can we have sex tonight? That's not leadership, right? You know, like, it's leadership is in creating the pathway where is the next on the pathway, where it's the obvious thing, because of the energy that is cultivated between the two of you. You know, so it's like, rather than asking for it, send her a sexy text message in the middle of the day. give her a really long hug and, a kiss on the neck, and really spend some time, with her body. Spend some time if it seems like she's stressed. In neuroscience, there's this theory of mirror neurons, where when one person's nervous system syncs up with another person's nervous system, that the mirror neurons start firing, and you can actually begin relaxing each other. But it takes like coming up to her, taking some deeper breaths, really being present, look at her, give her the kind of attention that you give someone when you want to have sex with them and they haven't been your wife for 10 years. And when you give her that kind of focused presence and attention, you begin actually leading her down the pathway to sex. But it doesn't feel like that, because you're not just asserting hey, you want to have sex tonight. You're actually showing her the way. And that's when women they're enrolled, they're excited. It's like we want to feel like we are being aware. And leadership when it comes to sex isn't necessarily just saying, I want to have sex, or complaining about how you're not having it. Rather, show up from a completely different context with this.
Okay. You mentioned porn earlier, and so obviously it's a huge thing, right? It's everywhere. I've seen men's groups where they have they're going porn free for a month, and so my question is this: so, in your opinion, because a lot of men even think that is just bad across the board, right? And that it kills a relationship and intimacy and all those other things. And so I'm curious to hear your take, Lo. If both parties in a relationship are on board, they both enjoy it mutually, is it still harmful?
If both parties enjoy it mutually, like they're watching it together?
Yeah, together, and they're not hiding it. And they can enjoy it together, and there's no jealousy, there's no issues. I notice you pick this kind of movie and she looks better than I do, type of thing. It's just open, right? Mm-hmm. Is that still harmful in your experience to a monogamous relationship?
I think with porn, the first step is having it not be hidden and in secret. So oftentimes, what I have seen work, how I've seen this go, is it's a secret, it's a problem. He's directing his sexual energy into the relationship, and then perhaps they come to some kind of middle ground where she wants to be involved in it. And I've seen this before. I have a client that she was like, let me just watch it with you. Let's at least be in it together, and they began having intimacy and having sex and enjoying the process of watching porn together. And that was something that they did. And then eventually, and that was kind of a middle ground. That was a place that they rested for a while. And eventually they weaned off of that. And they didn't need the stimulation of the porn, because they actually started having the kind of sex that they wanted to be having. So in this case, she was actually the one that was really and sometimes this happens in relationship too, and we haven't even addressed this yet, where she is wanting to have sex and he's just like not into it. So that also happens. And that, when a man is shut down to his partner, oftentimes he's entertained that energy somewhere else. So in this case, it was like what was important to her was bringing him, was what was important to her was coming into his sexual fantasy world. And so she came in there, and they started watching the porn together, and she was actually really open to it and enjoyed it. And at some point their sex life became so just hot and erotic, and they were doing all kinds of things that he never even thought that she would be into, and that she had never even thought of. And their sex life became so interesting to them that they no longer needed the porn, and they stopped watching it naturally. So when people ask me this question about, is porn bad? Is it, should you stay away from it completely? I don't have a yes or no answer to that, because I believe there's a lot of nuance and there's a lot of different situations that it can work for people. What I have seen is that over and over again is that if you tell someone that they can't do something and they shouldn't do something, there is a rebel inside of all of us that wants to do it anyway. So I think it's important to, rather than shame men for porn, create something that is so much more interesting and inviting that porn is no longer the most interesting thing on the menu. That's what this couple did, and I think that's possible. And sometimes a step in that process is actually becoming okay with it, and and so that the shame around it can be released. And for other people, it's actually like, no, you know what feels best in our relationship is just a cold turkey. Let's not do this anymore, and let's actually start exploring menu together.
Okay, but instances where it actually helps, where it's a positive thing, where two people are they're fine with it, it's not causing any issues, and they just mutually enjoy it, and it's just part of their sex life. They just happen to use it from time to time, that type of thing. I mean, you've seen those types of situations.
Absolutely.
So my thought was no matter how beautiful your wife is, what's going on in your bedroom, I think all of us have certain things we like, dislike, fetishes, whatever you want to call it. And you can find that whatever, your thing is, and maybe you have a bunch of them, you can find it, right? These little sub niches, and, there's so much out there. You start watching this stuff and you're like, well, my wife doesn't have this, or she doesn't do this, and then I believe, maybe that becomes an issue where you're like, well, my wife is gorgeous, but, I can go online and find exactly what I find the most erotic or the most sexual, and, she's just not there. I mean, is that a conversation that you've had before?
Yeah, I mean, and that can, again, it's so important to communicate about these things and to find a way to have transparency, because there's, it's fascinating because we live in this world where you can find anything that you want. You can find that perfect thing online. And the thing about that thing that you find online is it's not you're not getting whole human. You're getting an experience of this porn star in an isolated incident, and you're not seeing, what is she like when she wakes up in the morning? What is she like when she's running errands? And it's so there's this idea of perfection that is created with watching with porn and with movies. We see things, don't see the whole picture, and then we come home and we see the whole picture, and we see what she looks like in the makeup. We see what she's like when she's stressed or upset, and so we think that the porn version is better, and then media feeds this. So there's a way that what you're saying can disconnect one from the intimacy of the truth of relationship and of the full spectrum of the feminine, and how it's always pretty. Sometimes it's ugly. And when you're in relationship, you get all of that. So porn can create an imbalanced perception of the feminine. And that's really my concern with what you're saying, is like, oh, I can go find exactly what I want on the internet. My question is, just for everyone out there who believes that, is how does that affect the intimacy in my relationship? Does it add or does it take away? And if it takes away, where does my commitment and my priority really lie? In a momentary gratification, or in building a really strong relationship, and in perhaps being a little bit more creative in what my sex is like with my partner? And sometimes couples, I mean, look, I work with people. I have no issue with even people who have a more open kind of relationship. That's also something that people want to explore. Or they're like, yeah, we have this thing. We like a certain kind of porn together. It doesn't always mean that it's detrimental, and many times it is. So I think it's of the person who is having the desire can ask themselves that question. Is this serving the relationship or not? I think it's a very simple question. And then where does my priority lie?
When you and I scheduled this call initially, I posted something in my Facebook group, my private group, about it, and said, if you have questions, guys, I'm happy to ask them. And so, if it's cool with you, I've got a few questions here, and you've addressed a few of them indirectly already, but I'll just kind of read them as they were asked to me, if that's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the guy says he and his wife are in a routine. They have normal, regular sex. They both enjoy it. And his question is, should they try to spice things up just because it's just a routine now at this point? It's the same time. It's kind of the same process. Should they switch it up, or should it be like more of, if it's not broken, don't try to fix it type of thing?
Well, it's interesting because if he's asking the question, my sense is that there's a desire for something more. I mean, if it was amazing and it felt like it was the most fulfilling that it could possibly be, someone wouldn't ask that question. So my sense is, if you're asking the question, it's on the way to breaking, because people don't ask that question if it's just already amazing. So I have something that I don't know if you've seen this yet, but it's called the erotic menu. And it's essentially a way for couples in long-term relationships to spice up their current sexual life in the way that is most interesting and intriguing to them. So there's 4 different sections on the erotic menu. You can explore. It's a way to explore the full potential of your sexuality together and add in different spices. So for a sex life that is already working, that's only need new spices. But for a sex not working that's already more fully broken, you might need full new recipes. So there's a way that the erotic menu gives you the idea and the way to bring up the conversation of like, hey, here's a way that we could spice it up. Look, here's a menu. So I can give you that link for the show notes if you'd like, and you can even post it in your group, because this is a way that can be super helpful. And I created a quiz for people to see and have more of an understanding and history of what it is they're actually wanting, and then the language to communicate about it with their partner. So if you're asking the question of, should we spice it up? I don't know, it's already good, but should we spice it up? My sense is that you are on the way to want something a little bit different, even if you don't currently. So the best time to tackle that is now, and not when it's like, oh, this is boring. Because once it reaches that point, it's harder to maintain something than it is to fix it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. This erotic menu, is it like a book, or is it a video course? What is it?
Well, I have a course on it, an online course for couples to explore the erotic menu, and it's a way to spice up their current relationship. But I also just have information about a website. I have a page that is dedicated to explaining it. That's very. And I also have a quiz that people can take to better understand what it is that they are wanting.
Okay. All right. Got it. And so this other question here is, he wants to know how to discuss his fantasies with his partner who is not open-minded and doesn't communicate well at all when it comes to sexual talks. I have a feeling he's just very frustrated that he wants to share. Mm-hmm. She's just not interested, at least is not seeming to be interested or open to the conversation.
Right. So my sense from this question is that you're right, and he's frustrated. And I wonder if he's talking about fantasies, or asking her to open from that frustrated place. Because if that's what's happening, then it's already shot in the foot, there's nowhere that it can go, because it's coming from within the context of, you're not giving me what I want, and you're not open to it, and there's already a complaint in there. So my suggestion would actually be completely flip it on its head, and find is interested in, actually check in and be like, I feel like I'm always asking you, or trying to, tell you about what I want, and it seems like I've never actually asked you what you want. I'm really curious about, like, what is it? How can we have the greatest, most soul-quenching intimacy that you could possibly desire? Like, what would that be for you? And flip it around, and rather than trying to get her to be into what you're into, see what she's into. Because when the natural flow is when we receive everything that we want as a woman, the natural flow is for us to then want to give. It's absolutely the natural state of being feminine. So if you can find out what it is that she really wants, and just kind of leave the way that you've been doing it, whatever that is, to really just set that aside, and come from a place of curiosity and interest in what it is that she is into, that can often create a pattern interrupt in the way that it's currently been going, that hasn't been working.
Okay. This guy here, he said, he sounds like he's really struggling, but he said his wife is mental. She's overworked. She's not sleeping. She has no sex drive. The mother-in-law lives there. His son has some medical issues, and basically the sex life is non-existent, low on the priority list, and he doesn't know what to do at this point.
Yeah. So all of the pieces that you said in this question need to be addressed before the sex can be addressed, because this to looking at the nervous system, especially in the feminine body. She sounds like she's completely in fight or flight, not sleeping, stressed out, even more stressed out because she's menopausal. There's so many pieces that are causing a lack of health in the body. And when there's a lack of health in the body, sex is a holistic. It's when we can look at sex through the holistic lens of when a woman is in a relaxed state of pleasure and confidence, and really feeling good about herself and good in her life and relaxed, then that is when turn on becomes possible. So if, as a man, you are going right for the cookie at the end and skipping the dinner, it's like, if you look at, like, the dinner is her becoming a fully integrated, powerful, relaxed, confident, feminine being, and that's the dinner. And then after that happens, then she's gonna want to have sex, and you're gonna want to have sex. So I would really see if you can start to support her, and this will feel really good. As a woman, it's like when a man starts supporting us in feeling better about ourselves, in maybe creative ways to take some of the load off. Maybe send her some articles about sleep, and find some binaural beats meditations that you can at night that will help her sleep. Like, actually start going out of your way a little bit to support her in relaxing her nervous system and feeling better about herself. Check in with her about what her love languages are, and then give her love in that way. Maybe it's words of affirmation, and she just needs to hear that you see all the work she's putting in and you appreciate that. And maybe it's physical touch, and she feel your presence more. Maybe it's acts of service, and you can do something special for her. But it's like, start looking at it holistically, and not just like, how can I get sex, but rather like, how can I empower my woman to be confident and radiant and feel beautiful such that sex is a natural outcome?
Okay. All right. That's good stuff. And I love this next question. Because here's a married guy, he has 2 little kids, right? And they said he doesn't always have time for the physical act of sex, but he wants to know some ways that he can build intimacy and not sex, just the intimacy itself.
Yay, I love this question too. This is amazing. So good. So you're on the right track. This question is very much a generative question that is on the right track. So ways that you can build intimacy. So now there's different kinds of women, and you're gonna know your woman better than I do, hopefully. Maybe not. But there's some. So as if you look at it like this, foreplay starts the moment sex ends. So if you look at it like you are already creating intimacy and foreplay. So this can be done in many different ways. It can be done in the form of sending messages or leaving notes. You can create more intimacy by simply letting her know that you're thinking about her through a text message or a note. And if you want to add a sexy or playful undertone to it, then you can do that as well. Like add some, add a winky face in there, or just say, I noticed, as we left this morning, I just found myself in awe of how beautiful you are, or you look really sexy. You looked really sexy last night. I just wanted to let you know. You know how great it is to be at work and to receive a message of presence and focused attention from your partner that's just honoring you, wanting nothing back. That creates a deeper level of intimacy. Showing up and simply asking, I mean, such a great question is, it's like, I see that you're doing a lot. This is probably true of every single person's partner out there who's listening to this right now. I see how much you're doing. Like, I just see how much you're holding, how much you're handling, how much you're showing up. Just want you to know that I appreciate that. The thing melts under appreciation. So find a way to appreciate her and if you can find something specific, great. If not, then just say the general thing I just said. But if there's something specific, then say the specific thing. And then a follow-up question is there anything that I can support you with? That's such a beautiful question to hear from the masculine. I see how much you're doing. Is there any way I can support you? That's a beautiful way to create more intimacy. Like actually seeing her. It's like you see she's having a hard day. Maybe she's in the kitchen. My partner did this the other day. It was so impactful. It was like I was doing dishes in the kitchen. He was supposed to set up the internet on the TV so we could watch a thing, and he misunderstood what I wanted and he didn't do it, and I was a little like, I was kind of washing the dishes maybe a little more aggressively than normal. and he just came up behind me and put his arm around my waist and was just like, hey, how you doing? And I was just like, oh, well, I guess I'm probably a little frustrated. I kind of had a hard day. And he just held me there. He didn't try to fix it. He saw that I was frustrated and that wasn't actually about him and the internet thing, that it was actually just about me and my day. And he didn't take it personally, and rather just came over and was just like, hey, I'm here. And everything about his presence said, I'm here. The way that he had his hand around my waist, the way that he was kind of softly talking in my ear, and the way that he was, and then he said the question. He said, is there anything I can do to support you? And I said, actually, yeah, is the internet thing, if you could get that set up, because I don't like dealing with technical things and I don't want to think. He's like, of course I will do that. I misunderstood you earlier. I will go do that. I didn't even apologize, because it wasn't an apology that was actually needed. It was just a miscommunication. It's like I didn't need him to fix anything. I just wanted to know that he actually cared, that I had asked him something earlier. And so, through through physical touch, through letting her know you're thinking about her, through your presence, through random acts of service. I mean, surprise her with flowers, or surprise her with she really likes, or creating a romantic environment, or ordering food on a night when you know that she isn't going to have the energy to cook. It's like just in doing little extra things, giving her little extra acknowledgments, touching her at times when it might feel like you'd rather run away or just be upset. Those are all ways that you can begin to create more intimacy. And if you want it to be sexually charged, you can do that in all of those things that I just mentioned. I mean, you can do it in a look. I mean, I'm telling you, the feminine is so sensitive to an embodied masculine sexual presence. It's like you can look at her in the way that you looked at her when you first got together. Look at her in that way, and she will have a bully reaction to it. I guarantee it. So it's just a matter of kind of getting outside of your normal comfort zones and ways of interacting, and getting a little bit more creative with it.
Got it. Okay. Kind of on the flip side, the next guy wants to know how to approach a threesome. And I know you've talked about this at length, and
Yes.
I think you were thinking about this.
I do. Yeah, so I have a whole article on this that was published in the Good Men Project, and it's the link is on my website and Facebook and stuff, so people can find my links. But yeah, this is a topic that I cover in length with people, helping them open into what I call the gray zone, which is there's monogamy, black and white thinking, there's polyamory, black and white, and oftentimes there's a whole gray zone in the middle where people are feeling like, and that's what I'm sensing in this question, is we're not really feeling like we're fitting in the box of in the box of monogamy. Like, we're curious about having a threesome, or even maybe just flirting with other people. And so my recommendation with opening your relationship in some way, if you've never done it before, is go slower than you think you need to. Because oftentimes something sounds really great in fantasy, and then in reality, when it starts happening, somebody gets jealous, or it's overwhelming, or you don't know what to do. And so oftentimes people are like, we have a fantasy about having a threesome, so we're going to go to a swinger party and we're going to have a threesome. And that's absolutely generally not the way to approach it for most relationships. For most relationships, it's actually nice to approach it in baby steps. So where you actually go out and maybe in your sex tonight, you say, hey, you know what? Rather than just jumping to actually having this threesome, I'd love to milk it with you a little bit. I'd love to see how we can infuse some new erotic energy into our connection first. That can feel amazing as a woman to hear that a man doesn't just want to immediately jump right to having sex. And that's going to build more trust, create more safety, and ultimately have her be more turned on by the idea, because it's going to be the best if she's turned on by it. Trust me. You don't want a begrudging threesome. That never goes well. It's like you want one that both people are really excited by the idea. So I would suggest, infusing the fantasy into your current sex life. And then I would ask, what her interest is. Maybe she has some curiosity for other women. Maybe it's more like a gift that she really wants to give to you. Maybe there's an imbalance in the amount of sex drive that one of you has, and you see this as a way to balance that out more. I mean, there's so many different reasons why someone would want to have it, or it's just, you've been together for 10 years and you want to spice it up and you're curious about it and you both have some interest in that. There's a lot of different reasons why one could want to do it. And if both people are really turned on by the idea, it ends up going a lot better. So the next step, I would say, is actually finding out what each person really wants and where their turn-ons would be in the idea of having a threesome. And then from that place, and also concerns, you're going to want to talk about like, well, what would your concerns and triggers be as well? These are important things to address before, to create the baseline of trust and security. Then one of my favorite assignments to give people who are interested in threesomes is to actually just go out together and talk about who you think is sexy as a way to deepen your connection together, as like, find out who she thinks. That can be an extremely, it can be a very intimate exercise for a couple if they've never done something like that together, like actually just go out and look at people together, because you're creating a reality where you're really on the same team and you're doing something together. And I think that's where it's like you want to have the connection between the two of you strengthened and sexy and overflow, and so that you're not approaching a threesome as a means to fix something that's broken, because oftentimes that ends up driving a further wedge between you and your partner and your connection. So those are just a couple steps that I suggest to do before actually going and diving in and rolling around in the sheets with two women before you're fully ready to do it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll put the link to that article too.
Okay.
And we've been on the phone for a while, so I just want to have one more question for you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
My partner has a really negative view of sex toys and masturbation. I've been sharing my opinions with her that orgasm is a good thing, but she seems to think it's something that should only be shared with a partner. Long term, I have fears that if she finds out I've masturbated, if we're married years from now, she will still be hurt by that. How can I frame the conversation to help her understand that I have a pretty high sex drive and that I love her regardless? The intimacy I have with her in no way compares without her, but she has a lot of fears that I just don't need her.
Interesting. So my question here is, sometimes I ask a question back to a question, because I think there's sometimes better questions that we'd be asking. And my inquiry with this is, have you asked her, I mean, what if you had all of your sex with her? Does she have that level of sex drive or interest in showing up for you fully sexually? And I, by the way that the question was asked, unless I missed something, it doesn't sound like he has ever given her the opportunity to hold his full sexuality. That there's been or he thinks that, I need to also have this other thing on the side. So my curiosity in this particular connection is, if he wants to have sex every day, is she open to that? And because sometimes this I think is pointing to a potential imbalance in level of sex drive. And if there's an imbalance in level of sex drive, and it's like, hey, I want to have sex more than you do. A lot of creative ways that people work with that. But I'm not even sure if there's actually an imbalance of sex drive in this, or if it's just something where he hasn't actually brought his full sex drive to her to see if she can actually meet it. If there is an imbalance in sex drive and someone has, wants to take care of themselves separately, and the other person wants it all to be together, but they don't want to. I mean, there's a way that, I mean, he could be pleasuring himself with her there. And maybe she could still be involved, but not actually having to have as much sex as he does. Maybe it's like, she's like, I'm not in the mood, but I'll sit here and talk dirty to you while you take care of yourself. You know what I mean? There's creative ways when there's an imbalance in sex drive that we can still show up to support each other. But first, I think it's actually taking a look at if there is even an imbalance, or if he just hasn't ever really fully been willing to bring his full desire to her to see if it's something that she is interested in.
Yeah, from what I understand, it sounds like they're not married, but they're in a committed relationship and headed towards marriage, and she doesn't agree with masturbating because she feels having an orgasm should be shared. all the time. And so he's worried that once they get married and they start talking about it, and he says, well, yes, I masturbated quite a bit, she will be very upset about that. And now I guess it sounds like he's probably hiding that at this point.
Yeah. So the first step is to say, hey, like, this is something that we're going to need to talk about. I mean, it's going to be a super important conversation to have. And I would approach it from the perspective of looking at if we have an imbalance in our sex drives. How do we handle like I think the question to ask her is, how do you think we should handle an imbalance in our sex drives if there is one? Actually, the first question is there an imbalance in our sex drive? Do you want to be having sex every day? Because I would love to have sex every day. And if there is an imbalance in that, how do you think we should handle it? I would ask her, and then get the details. It sounds like this conversation hasn't been said. So there's a lot of details. There's a lot of questions I have about this. And one of them is definitely, so at what point do you actually feel like masturbation isn't appropriate or something that you're interested in? What if I'm masturbating with you there? Like, what if you're helping me? Is that still, it's like actually finding what specifically it is she's not okay with. Because if it's, that I want to have, or I think that all of our sexual energy should be shared. I mean, that's interesting. And then is it that she just doesn't want him watching porn? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of, it just sounds like a conversation that needs to be had to find out the specifics of what her issue is.
Okay. All right. Good stuff. So yeah, respectful of your time. We've been on the phone for a while here, and I think this has been, out of the conversation, and I think it's been very helpful. So, going forward, where do you want people to find out more about you, your services, what you do? Because I think there's a lot of benefit to what you do.
Mm-hmm. So my website, and we can probably put this a link to this in the notes here as well, but it's JamieElizabethThompson.com, JamieElizabethThompson.com. And then I also post a lot of videos, links to my published articles on Facebook. And my Facebook is facebook.com/Miss Jamie Elizabeth. And then I also have Instagram. I mean, I do all the social media things, and I'm always posting all kinds of stuff. So we can have the links in the show notes, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah. So thank you so much. I'd love to stay in touch. And this has been, very eye-opening here. So hopefully we helped a lot of guys here.
Great. Yeah, this was great. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, if you want more information, check out the Fit Dad Basecamp group on Facebook. And don't forget to stop by fitdadnation.com. Until next time, keep kicking ass and taking the next step. You can do this, Dad.